Welcome to Geordie Lass Doc Sass. One day, a Geordie and a Canadian walk into a bar and decide to start a podcast about relationships, and what a topic that is. No subjects are off limits. Get in touch today with us at geordielass.com or email info@geordielass.com and let us know what you think and what we should talk about. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Hey.
Hello. How's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. I think we're having like this impossibly large amount of snow. I think the almanac said that we would, but like it's very beautiful. It's snowing right now. It's been snowing for days. So it's like extremely wintry, but it's also mid-March. So I'm like, is it not time for a little bit of spring? I'm just saying.
It's like, come on, I'm ready.
Oh
I'm waiting.
Ridiculous. I'm like, wait a minute, the sundresses. I'm in this perpetual state of denial that Toronto is somehow like not as wintry for so long as it is. And acceptance, I think, is something that I really need to be able to lean into.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter's sending me lots of pictures of snow from uni as well. We don't really get snow in Jersey very often. So,
interesting.
all of her friends were kind of teasing her at uni, like, do you not even get snow at Jersey? Like, why are you this excited?
Oh, interesting.
You know, all the Jersey girls were absolutely ecstatic with the amount of snow. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So a very different weather pattern, though not that far away, though. Like in, I suppose in Canadian terms, if it's several hundred miles or kilometers away, that's not very far for us.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to pick up my cat.
It's okay.
Oh, that's lovely. How have you been, all things considered?
Well, I'm starting to get there. I'm still not 100%. You can hear my voice is still a little bit croaky. But yeah, I'm feeling a little bit more awake, which is good.
Okay.
I think I had a little bout of narcolepsy.
Oh.
I continually fell asleep.
Oh gosh,
Quite regularly.
Yeah. Like when you're fighting things off, it's so emotionally exhausting. So you tend to need a lot more sleep.
Yes, I have been sleeping a lot.
Okay.
Much needed.
Yes,
but we're on the road to recovery.
Good. 'Tis the season of crazy viruses.
It is indeed.
Yes. Well, what is happening, Miss Relationship Desk Correspondent, even though it takes much more energy, I'm sure, to collate this news, but what's going on at the desk?
Well, I've got something very short and sweet, but hopefully it will give you food for thought.
Okay, I need that.
I think you might need this too. Okay, so I've got a very, very short quote to share with you today.
Okay.
And it is, be the type of person you want to meet.
Oh, wait, I'm running this through my head because it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
So much of the time we say something like, I want to find my ideal partner. I want to find a good match. I want to find a good woman, a good man. And it is quite ludicrous because it's completely outsourcing the responsibility for relationship success to finding a quote unquote good person.
Yeah.
So the quote that you just told me says, well, just like Gandhi, right? I guess it's not a direct quote, and he didn't say this exactly, but be the change that you want to see in the world. And by the way, that is absolutely not what he ever said. Just to say that. But it was in the spirit of what he said. It was just a much longer letter about snakes. Yeah. I think I remember. But anyways, so yeah, it's a weird thing. But what's your interpretation? The thing is, there's so much complexity in that quote. I love it. What does it mean for you?
So I think we talk a lot, don't we, about, and it came up recently in a coaching session that I was doing as well, around really just we expect and want other people to deliver a certain environment, to create a certain relationship, to show us that they kind of love and care for us and are there for us. But equally, we need to take responsibility for that as well. So if we're going to expect somebody else to show up for us, to care for us, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be our cheerleader, to support us, then surely we need to do that in return for other people. And we also need to do that in return to ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. There's just so much, there's like worlds of concepts in that one statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I feel like you're laying down some pearls for my next relationship. I'm like, oh, Sarah, I am packing that in my suitcase.
I'm just lining you up. This is just a podcast purely for your own education.
That's so great. I would say that I feel like I mimic probably the circumstances of many people who are tuning in. Maybe they're recently single. Maybe they are about to go through a divorce. Maybe they have been single for a while and they're frustrated at the dating scene. So yeah, I feel like I'm definitely the archetype of the person listening. I am both, what was the hair club for men? The guy was like, I'm both the president as well as a customer of the hair club for men. I would like to say that I am both the co-host as well as the customer and audience of the Geordie Lass and Doc Sass show.
Aren't we all, my love? Aren't we all?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. The philosophy of life. The school of life. Although that is a branded, trademarked sort of podcast or repository of information, the School of Life, so I don't want to infringe upon them. I do not want copyright lawyers coming after my ass. I have enough problems in mind in my life. Oh, all right. Well, that was
Thank
lovely.
you for the disclaimer.
Yeah, of course. Don't want to get us in trouble.
So, from one educational moment to another, I'm going to bring you a hot topic that you might like this week.
Oh, yes, please. Let's do it.
Okay. Today's hot topic: things to consider when you're starting a relationship.
Yeah, like exactly. Yes. Thank you.
This is Anna's lesson this week.
It's Anna's lesson this week. Yes. Whew, I need to be here now. Yes. Okay. Let's get going.
We need to be here, but you do need to participate too.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's so true. That's so true. Oh, this is exciting. Okay. So I think one of the things that is not included in the how to begin a relationship is to think like, well, I'm just going to find somebody who's not like my ex is and who's actually like a good person or a person who can save me or, you know, a person who can complete me, unlike those other assholes in my past. That's not what is going on here. Am I right?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the time we're not that kind of consciously aware when we start a relationship. Mm-hmm. And we can go into it thinking about almost the solution or this kind of vision about how I want things to be. And it's very much focused on a lot of the time on the other person and who they are. And, you know, we could start kind of like a wish list. My favourite programme came back on TV this week. So Married at First Sight.
Yes.
So new series, very excited. That helped me a lot with my cold symptoms.
Yep.
But one of the guys on there, I'm not kidding you, he must have had a list of about 25, 30 things that he didn't want from a partner.
Did not want.
Did not, yeah. So, and he described it as things that gave him the ick. So made him feel kind of unpleasant, uncomfortable, unhappy. And it had like, you know, really kind of superficial things on there, like chicks that are into star signs. You know, just kind of random things that really you should be able to overlook in a person. But, you know, as it kind of transpired, obviously they're things, because it's easier to have a list of things that you don't want to have in a relationship than it is to actually face up to some of the challenges that you've had in relationships and the challenges that you have given yourself over to somebody else, or sharing some of your innermost vulnerabilities or fears or insecurities. So kind of all of that then kind of, you know, comes out and develops in the story. We know that to be true. So the more problems and obstacles that we put in the way, the less likely is that relationship to be successful.
Yes. Oh, wow. No, but Married at First Sight, now I think you very justifiably love the show, but it's also, it's fluff, right? To a certain extent. Like, it's kind of like what not to do a little bit, would you say? Like, what would you?
Well, often, I mean, kind of people are going on there because they want to find love. So, you know, sometimes I kind of question some of the motives. Is it about love or is it about some sort of exposure? Yeah. And that's just the cynical side of me that comes out.
It's very realistic. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, if we accept that kind of the majority of people on there are on there because they want to find a relationship and the things that they've been trying in the past have not worked for them. So then, you know, naturally as the program progresses, you see kind of more of those things being worked out. And that's what I enjoy about the program, is actually kind of, you know, seeing some of those realities of the things that come up in relationships. And so, yeah, in some sense, could you say it's like what not to do? But that's, I guess, why the experts are there and as part of the program to help to guide them and try and kind of demonstrate some of the more positive ways to start a relationship and to interact with each other and to open up to one another.
Nice. Okay. So we're not looking for, we don't have a list of like 30 things that bug the shit out of us that we're looking to not have in our next relationship. But like, so yeah, how do you ready yourself? And I'm taking notes in my brain. Actually, maybe I'll step in here to say the first thing that is really important is to realize like how ultimately humanly flawed you yourself are. And to take full on responsibility for the missteps and misgivings of past relationships. The only way to start off in building the relationship of your future is to accept full responsibility for the things that you're responsible for the things that didn't go well or were not functional, of the growth areas that you need to, that you would like to spend a lifetime closing the gap on. So I'm flawed, and that's step one, and that's great. I start from there.
I'm well done for your honesty.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. You know, we're not honest with ourselves about who we are as people, and we're not honest about some of the things that have happened in the past. We're not honest about who we want in the future. And I think there's real clarity needed around all of that. So if we sit and think, and I think often it's really useful to have kind of some space to be able to process and think about some of these things and not, you know, that temptation, isn't there, to kind of jump from one relationship to another until you kind of, you know, hope that you'll get it kind of right. But there isn't any space for processing and forethought that really actually kind of starts to create that vision of the relationship that you want. But some of that reflection time is really, really important to say, well, you know, if I objectively look back at the past relationships that I've had that haven't been, you know, long-term successful, and they may have had successful moments in them. So I think it's important to look at kind of both sides of that to say, well, what is it that worked? What kind of worked really well and what didn't work so well? You know, it's a bit like your own kind of relationship appraisal. And, you know, what part did I play in that? You know, what were my expectations that maybe didn't get met? And what was the reason that I couldn't maybe voice some of those expectations? How could I have been clearer going into the relationship? You know, did I kind of not admit that I wanted, you know, a house and kids and the full shebang? Did I kind of start off quite gentle saying, yeah, I'm not, you know, just after some casual, when actually secretly inside that wasn't what I was going in for, but I just didn't want to admit that because of fear of rejection or any of those things. So getting really clear and honest about what you want, about who you are, about some of the things that maybe have driven some of the behaviour patterns within the relationship. And, you know, can you do anything about that before you actually embark on something new?
Oh, yeah.
And it's super hard, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is really, really hard. So how do you look into your blind spots? I think the most important thing is like, there's the things like, oh, I definitely need to change that. And then there's things that you're like, well, I need to change that, but I don't clearly see, like, I'm not really calling myself out on my own bullshit. Like what are the hardest things for us to kind of see with clarity or to own?
Well, I think most of it is.
Yeah, it's true.
Because we don't, you know, we don't want to admit that we've done something wrong. And I think, you know, so maybe if you position it from a point of view, which is, okay, everything that I did was wrong. So let's start to list those out. Clearly, not everything you did was wrong, because that's just not how it works. But if you start from that real kind of extreme point and start to put down something, I think often it's an iterative process. And if something isn't coming or it's not flowing or you're not kind of really fully understanding it, then take a break. Don't force reflection, because you've got to be in the right kind of space. It can be useful to talk to other people, to have conversations, to really just kind of explore it and, you know, to listen to other people about the things that work and don't work in their relationships. because you'll find some similarities and then you can go, oh, well, actually, how often have we been having a conversation and I've gone, oh, hang on a minute. I recognise that in my relationship, or because you kind of start to process things in the moment as you have in the discussion.
Yeah.
So I think it can be really useful to have some of those honest conversations with somebody that you can trust. If you can't find somebody that you can trust, then obviously there's always you can go down the professional route to explore some of the, some of these situations for yourself.
True. And not only seeking out the opportunities from people that you trust, but also working on the defensiveness, which is a reaction that most of us have, because getting to the point of, okay, so we are very poor at acknowledging that we're not perfect, which is why defensiveness comes up. We may ask for inputs, but we may spend just as much time, if not more, trying to rationalize to that person that their inputs and feedback are actually incorrect. Best friend of mine who's known me for 30 years, what do you think that I should need to work on? What are the patterns that you've noticed in my past relationships? Well, you tend to lose yourself, and I don't hear from you as much, and you kind of let your friendships drop when you're, in relationship. And if I were being defensive, I'd be like, well, no, but I was trying to reach out, but you were the busy one. And actually, I have a lot of interests. Well, that's your defensiveness coming up. It doesn't matter. Setting the record straight is not the exercise here. It's getting vulnerable to be like, yeah, you know what? That is true. I have lost myself in a relationship. And my friend is stepping out on the line to give me a hard piece of feedback that she knows will ultimately be of benefit to me. So accept it graciously and say thank you. Thank you for saying that. It took a lot of courage, and I'm going to consider it and work on it.
And defensiveness is a really interesting emotion, isn't it? Because as soon as you feel that coming up, or you really feel like you want to justify your position in something quite passionately, it's often a trigger that there's something that we're hearing that we don't like. So we're going to try and deflect from that by, blaming something else, or, diverting the attention somewhere else. Because we don't want to admit that, well, actually, I probably was a bit of a sucky friend, and I did leave you high and dry.
Yeah, because we think, oh my God, that's so terrible. I'm not perfect, and therefore I will be rejected and abandoned because I'm not lovable. It doesn't mean that. It's like, I love you anyways, but you were a dick when you were in a relationship with those past two people.
But there's the kind of shame factor, isn't there? Or the, embarrassment that actually I've behaved in a way that, I probably, I'm less than pleased about. And so because of that, we can get this really, really strong reaction to kind of defend and deflect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of it. Looking for feedback is not just looking for feedback, it's also accepting the feedback and letting it in. And that's probably the hardest. And so much so that some of our friends, they're like, oh, you know what? They're asking for feedback, but they can't handle the truth. And so, for some people, you won't actually get the truth. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's other stuff you can do as well around. I'm a big advocate for working on, some of, if you are struggling with kind of low self-esteem, or that there are areas that actually challenge your own self-confidence, I'm a big advocate really of kind of working on some of those deeper issues, and really look at your, past attachment styles. Like, how have you formed relationships? How have you formed bonds? And how do you then attach in a more secure way?
Oh my God, you're preaching to the...
I know.
Oh, no, but it's wonderful. Sarah, I'm so up in my attachment styles right now. I'm having this come to Jesus moment about my really insecurely attached, and where it all comes from. And it is grueling. There was a point of today where, because I'm crying in great ways. Crying is just a release of energy. But there's a lot of stuff coming up, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is so necessary, but it's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to be working through this. But yeah, when you look at your attachment styles and you realize how hamstrung you've been for past relationships, if you can cry for that inner child who was, if you're insecurely attached, there was some trauma or neglect in your background that led to that. And man, there's nothing that starts the waterworks going when you realize I experienced lack of safety when I was tiny, right? And just to imagine like, oh my God, now I have to be the person now who takes care of that inner child, that nurtures and mothers that inner child, to be able to start to, attach more securely to people. It's the hardest, most vulnerable work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think being able to forgive some of the things that have gone on in the past.
Yeah.
Is quite an important part of the process.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, like, I was there today, which is like, 44 years ago, I was all like, I wasn't, I didn't have a safe environment or whatever, because my parents were not in a position to give that. But I'm like, it's 44 years ago, Anna. It's time.
Yeah.
Statute of limitations. I have to be my own parent now. Like that, my job now is to be my own parent, to soothe myself, to nurture myself, to lift myself up. The same things you were talking about yesterday, right? Like, be my own cheerleader, be my own champion.
Yeah.
Pick myself up and dust myself off. Like, I got to forgive the people who were tasked with that, but just couldn't come through. And it is what it is. Everybody's just doing their best. Parents just do their best, It is what it is. Yeah.
I don't think anyone deliberately sets out to ruin their kids' lives.
No.
But, sometimes there's a bit of nuclear fallout along the way.
Right. Yeah.
Because we are all flawed and we're all human.
Yeah.
So we've got to accept that, we've got to kind of forgive and be able to move on from that.
Yeah.
Because we can't change the past.
And forgiving allows us to move on. It's not a gift to somebody else. It's a gift to ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said.
I think as a non-parent, I'm like, I can stand in judgment of like, oh, it wasn't hard to give love to your baby. I'm like, but I'm not a mom and I don't know what that feels like to just have your entire world, like a nuclear bomb thrown into it with the birth of a child, or much less the second birth, where like taking care of the first. It's not like, just like you described a number of podcasts ago, it's like, I have to take care of this new baby and I've got a toddler.
Yeah.
And for people who have 3 or 4 kids, they're like, it's like a circus. It's like, and no wonder balls fall and wheels fall off the bus, right? Like, of course they will. It's madness. It's mayhem. I can't even begin to imagine the start of it, being a non-mom, right? So, yeah. I feel like I've taken this on the detour of where my thinking has been in recent weeks, but the attachment styles, oh my God, yes. Are there other sort of things that you would, closets or trunks that you would recommend looking into and taking a hard look at as you start or think about starting a relationship?
Consider, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but, just to kind of, I guess as a reminder, is really think about some of those big stuff, like where is it that your heart lies? So when it comes to some of those bigger decisions in life, when you think about kind of your kind of future life map, like what does that look like? Consider doing some work around values, like just really, I think all of this is pointing to the fact that you need to get to know yourself. Because how do you know the person that is right for you if you don't actually know kind of the parts that are about you that are kind of right, and then what do you want to attract to couple up with that?
Oh gosh, yeah.
So there is, this great kind of just understanding and taking some time and that period of reflection to really just assess like who am I? And often we get stuck in these really old stories and narratives about who we are as people. We neglect to realise some of the changes that we've encountered. So it can be really, particularly when we've had kind of childhood difficulties or we've had challenging relationships in the past, it can be really, really hard not to hold on to that person because it's almost like a kind of badge of honour, right? That I've had a tough life. We see like a lot of it now where people are very openly sharing their kind of traumatic life experiences with kind of anybody who will listen. Mostly because I want to try and sell you something, but that's again just my kind of skepticism. So there's a lot more kind of outpouring of kind of grief and trauma and turmoil that people kind of want to share, but we can get really attached to actually that's who we are. Totally. And I really kind of question, am I still that person? Where's the evidence that tells me I'm still that person who, maybe couldn't speak up for themselves? Or am I still that person if you kind of label yourself as a people pleaser, well, actually, is that really true now? Or do I make decisions for myself? Do I have stronger boundaries? Am I more likely to say, actually, this is what I want and this is not what I want? Rather than kind of, I'll do anything. So really try and kind of separate some of those, the stories, the fact from fiction. Really separate that out and challenge everyone thinking about who you are as a person, so you can get a real accurate picture. And it's only ever going to be kind of semi-accurate because we're all looking through a slightly foggy lens.
Yes. And what may help, so you usually say how you show up in one part of your life is how you show up in all, but I will say that there's actually a really important distinction is, especially if I'm coaching folks, I'll say that how you show up in one area is how you show up in most, but generally folks have this one part of their lives where they're really like knocking it out of the park in terms of confidence, boundaries, and where they've actually overcome people pleasing. It might be that they're a hopeless mess in relationship with friendships, but they're really, really great at their job. Or they're great at sports, or they're really great at, friendships.
Yeah.
And this is where, to your point, right, is it really true that you're a people pleaser? You might be a people pleaser in your intimate relationship and in your job, but for some reason, you've got a friend circle where you guys are really able to set some healthy boundaries, where you're not sort of people pleasing and so forth. So if in one part of your life, if you're showing up in a way that you would like to for all parts of your life, then if it exists somewhere in your life, then it means that is part of your truth. And so how do we harness that non-people pleasing and just start to extend it? Like what are the blocks standing in the way of us taking that same approach that you have with your circle of friends and putting that into work, into your career?
I'd say the same for attachment styles as well. We can have a predominant attachment style when we're in an intimate relationship, but we very often don't have those same attachment styles, whether it's kind of at work or whether it's with friendships. So really look at what is it that makes that different, and how do you bring more of that? If you've got more of a secure attachment style elsewhere with other key individuals, what is it about that person that makes you feel more secure? And then how do you use that to integrate into some of those more romantic relationships?
Oh gosh. And actually, like, something that I think of when you say that is, imagine that we sort of extend attachment styles to your beliefs about money. So like in my case, I have a very insecure attachment when it comes to intimate relationship. And I ultimately think there's a lack mentality. I will always be abandoned. But yet I have a very secure attachment with money in that I don't like an abundance mentality. I'm like, it'll come, it'll go. Like I don't have to chase money. And so it just comfortably, like, I'm not saying that like I'm wealthy by an extent, but it's just, I don't usually have to worry about that. It just kind of sorts itself out. But yet other people are the exact opposite. They can be very securely attached in a relationship, but they're always running from pillar to post in terms of money because of their sort of limiting beliefs about money. So it is absolutely true that like I can see very secure attachment in some parts of my life and absolute off the chain, chaotically insecure attachments to other things.
Yeah.
And if we believed that we were capable of being securely attached to all things, because there's evidence to say we're attached securely to at least some things or people in our lives, then by just extension, could we not scale it out to spread that secure attachment mentality across all spheres of our life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God. Stuff is hard. I think I just want to be on like Married at First Sight and find somebody who like completes me. I don't know, Sarah.
I'm sure they'll be signing up for a US or a Canadian version soon.
Oh my God, of course. Yeah, just to, that whole Jerry Maguire, you complete me thing. Unfortunately, it's not true, but sometimes it just feels like really mentally exhausting. And sometimes I just wish that I had zero responsibility for the misgivings of my past relationships. I wish it was somebody else's fault, but it's not.
And some of it will be in part, but some of it will also be down to you.
Well, and the thing is too, and I really loved how one client said this. So we had been coaching primarily around career, but what comes up time to time with this client is this concern about dynamics in their intimate relationship. And they were all sort of like, oh, my partner does this, that, and the other. They're in the wrong. We didn't really focus on it until recently, where they realized, actually, it's not entirely my partner that's doing everything 100% wrong. I actually have some part to play with it. And they expressed great relief because they were like, when I was living in the world of it's completely my partner and I have no agency and it's all their fault, I had no agency and no control. But now that I realize that there's a part, at least a more than 0% part of this dynamic that I'm contributing to, that gives me agency for change and to actually affect the process. So weirdly, taking responsibility can turn us from the victim into the person who has agency and is in the driver's seat. So responsibility doesn't have to be this like awful thing, like this Catholic flogging, like you're responsible, you're guilty. No, I mean, it actually gives us something to work on to take responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Responsibility sets you free. So, any last thoughts on the hot topic, which has given me much fodder for excitement for the future? I think
my last thought would just be to say, for those of the listeners that are actually in a relationship as well, a lot of the words actually are still applicable. Because we can get locked in relationships and think, well, this is it. It's never going to change. It's always going to be like this. So, yeah, you have the same chance, the same opportunity.
I love it. That's harder, but yes, it's true. Yeah, it's not fully baked in.
Yeah.
The paint is not dry. You can still move it around a little bit with your brushes.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty.
All right.
Shall we tackle a question?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So today's question. I'm having trouble trusting my wife. I love her more than anything. I think she may be talking to and seeing someone else, but she continually tells me that I'm crazy and that nothing's happening. But certain things that I've seen and that she does makes me think otherwise. I'm hoping I'm wrong and she is faithful. I continue to check her phone to see if there's anything going on, and it's pissing her off. And there's always an answer and an attitude.
Oh, this is hard. I've heard some red flaggy things. Something that I came up with a long time before, and I still stand by it, is that I have in my past relationship, there was a strictly no checking each other's phone, no looking over the shoulder to see what messages is popping up on your partner's phone. I'm going to stand by like checking your partner's phone is an off limits thing, or any of their digital devices. It's just absolutely off limits. There's no need for it ever. Never even once. And I will stand by that. But just saying.
If you were doing something wrong and you knew that your partner was going to check your phone, surely you'd just delete all that shit anyway.
Listen, I've got a number of apps that I know about that have like disappearing messages and like Telegram, Signal, a whole bunch of untraceable stuff. Snapchats. Totally. Yeah. Like if somebody wants to cheat.
Not that we know how to use Snapchat because we're just too old.
Well, we're old. Yeah, but if we wanted to, there's nothing like the motivation of an affair. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, just, gosh, I've coached some instances where, man, there's been this such intrigue and sort of like effort placed on trying to surveil each other's digital devices. And I'm like, look, anybody who's really invested to keep secrets will always be 2 steps in front of you. So
yeah.
A liar is going to be a liar. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah. But okay, so there's some red flaggy stuff coming up in this, but there's also, I'm hearing there's a person who is just deeply concerned, insecure, sad, feeling out of control. Like this person asking the question is feeling out of control.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
So where do you start with this?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of unsaid in that question about actually kind of, I've seen things, there's issues that are kind of, are surfacing, or kind of, I'm seeing some evidence that's creating this level of mistrust, but then you've got this kind of assurance. And then obviously as the husband is then kind of raising it repeatedly, then it sounds like, there is then some kind of response coming back from the partner, which is kind of like, look, I've had enough now. I'm sick of being asked about this. You keep wanting me to kind of justify my position and justify my love for you, and anything that I do just isn't good enough.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one side. But on the other side, like, where's it all coming from? What is it that's driving this kind of this level of mistrust?
So there's certainly two options. The option is there is a reason to mistrust. There's certainly a very viable option that this partner is having an affair. There's sort of like a version 1.5, which is like, well, I wasn't having an affair until you kept talking about me having an affair. And then I was like, well, screw it, I'm just going to have an affair. That actually happens. That literally happens, is somebody is so insecure that they drive a partner who's so sick of justifying. They're like, well, I might as well misbehave, because what difference would it make? And it drives disengagement. But I guess the thing that you and I are more concerned about probably is that this person is insecurely attached, is reading signals, is making their own interpretations, and is going haywire with them.
Yeah.
And believes deeply that they are unlovable, that they're going to be abandoned, and therefore, well, if they're not currently abandoned, then this kind of behavior, this mistrusting behavior, is going to get them abandoned, right? Like this is going nowhere real fast.
Yeah. Some self-sabotage. I think one of the questions I would ask is, what needs to change in order for you to feel like you can trust your wife again?
Oh, I like it. And why does this question, how will the answer to this question tell you a little bit more about what's going on? Like, what are the different ways that somebody might answer this that might give you some clues?
Well, there's clearly something about, there's some behaviour that's happening that is creating some sort of level of mistrust. So I would imagine that the answer would be in connection with whatever that behaviour is, and that behaviour kind of reversing. And then it's about kind of exploring that in more detail. So
what if he came back and said, I wouldn't be worried if she didn't, if she wasn't so withdrawn, or if she was more, intimacy has fallen off. We are no longer intimate as much anymore, or she doesn't spend time with me anymore, or she doesn't look me in the eye anymore. If that was the answer, like, if she were to make me feel more secure, how's that? What would you counter with? Like, what would be your next sort of statement or question if he's like, well, if she just made me feel more secure, then I would feel more secure?
So again, it's then kind of exploring that. Okay, well, what would she need to do then to make you feel more secure? And then it's gradually kind of moving on to, actually, how could you get more of that for yourself?
Yeah, right.
So no one can make us feel a certain way. We feel that way because we're interpreting the situation to be something. And it's trying to get below that to understand that interpretation and look for alternative possibilities. So, what else could be going on? So around intimacy, you get this quite a lot, don't you, with people? What else could be going on then? Have things changed at work? Has it suddenly become more stressful? Is it kind of a certain stage in life that's kind of generating this? Or have you got kids that are suddenly being more demanding or creating more troubles or worries that are then kind of adding the stress factor? Or the money worries that are then kind of overtaken? So there's all kinds of things that play into intimacy. And it doesn't mean that you're having an affair just because you're not kind of, you're not having the usual regular amount of sex that you would have done before. Things change, right? And the more you get out of the habit, the less you kind of want to be in the habit is often the case. And it's then just, okay, what can you do to try and rekindle that in some small steps? So I think it is really about, we talked before there about responsibility. So how can this person take some responsibility in this area? How can they start to feel like they can trust again in the relationship? What's one thing your wife would need to do, but actually what's one thing that you'd need to do as well? Yeah. And then how do you work on those two small steps just to move you a little bit closer to feeling like you can trust again?
Yeah. Some things that help my particularly analytical clients is to create a prospective experiment, which is like this. So I'm usually only coaching one person. Sometimes I'm coaching a couple, but a lot of the time, this husband, for example, I'd be coaching them. And I'd say, okay, why don't we design an experiment? And for a set amount of time, you decide 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 weeks, you are going to show up with 1 or 2 very strong, actionable things that will start to change the dynamic, right? Maybe you get a new hobby, so you're not like obsessing about what your wife is doing all day. Maybe you initiate intimacy more, or you start to, hey, why don't we spend some time? Why don't we go to this show together? Where you're actually showing up with the more of the degree of the intimacy that you want to see. And you get to sort of give X amount of time until you start to see the behavior of your wife change, if it is going to change. And I welcome your dissent on this if there is to be had. But like after about 6 to 8 weeks of consistently showing up in a different fashion where you're really holding your own frame and you're not sort of looking like this really insecure sort of codependent person, right? Which is not attractive to anybody, right? But if you're starting to hold your own frame, be interdependent, stand on your own 2 feet, if really your wife isn't having an affair, but she's actually just super tired of you being so codependent, and if you start to change that behavior, chances are she'll start to come, that will move her chess piece, and she'll start to then lean into you a little bit more. If she is truly having an affair, then her behavior doesn't budge, well, then maybe that tells you something. Yeah. So there is a way to, because the thing is, though, is that when I'm dealing with one person who is willing and able to take the responsibility to make that first change, and we have no control over the other person making a reciprocal change, we set up an experiment and we see what happens. But
you have to ride it out long enough, don't you? So I like the kind of, the kind of setting a reasonable time level on it. So like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is. Because you need to, and this is the thing that most people kind of get wrong in relationships, is you don't give some of the changes time to bed in. You don't allow them to be acknowledged fully before you kind of withdraw that behaviour, because you go, it's not working, or then they don't appreciate my effort, therefore after kind of one attempt I'm going to withdraw that because I've not seen, I haven't seen you concede and respond in the way that I'd like you to, therefore I'm not interested. So I'm going to go back because it's not working. But we're not given these things long enough to be able to see the effect of the change.
Oh, yeah. And
to allow the other person to trust us that actually we're not just a kind of one-hit wonder, and we're not going to go back to some of those old patterns of behaviour.
Oh, like totally, because we've been ping-ponging off each other so much that absolutely. Yeah. I've been the perpetrator, and I have also been the person exhausted by somebody else's emotional dependence. Yeah. Where if for like a week or two, they're like, oh, I've turned over a new leaf. Look at me all independent. I'm like, I don't trust it. You're going to be like blowing up my phone and acting all like, in short order. And so you're right. It does take time to establish trust. The problem is we don't generally start to work on this until like the wheels are half off the bus and we have no patience anymore. And our interpretations have dug in so hard that we're so hurt and there's so many raw nerves. Yeah. It is very, very hard to ask a partner, like, create a change and stick to it consistently without a slip up for 8 weeks. Yeah. And then very few of us, not to sort of spell the death knell of relationship, but like sometimes relationships have to end, not because they couldn't have worked out, but because we started working on it when resentment and totally fried nerve endings have set in. Yeah. But truly that is it. Like, consistent, persistent change, unwavering change is really the only way that this guy can have any control over what his wife's behavior is. Or not control, influence. Yeah.
I think the final thing I'd say is, this guy kind of starts off by saying how much he just truly loves his wife. Like, that's something to be cherished and to kind of to hold on to. Like, if I really truly love my wife, then surely I can trust her.
Yeah, but I can't distinguish this question from obsession and ownership. I know, deathmatch. No, I mean, it's true though. Like, if he truly does, if the words that he's saying is the sentiment that he actually holds, then it is true. How can you not trust somebody that you love? Yeah. But I guess for me is I would need a session or two to understand, is this love or is this ownership and obsession?
Let's focus on the love.
I know, but you know how I always looking at the dark side of the moon?
I do indeed.
That's my job.
I totally get what you're saying. There is a point kind of, can you love somebody too much? Absolutely.
Yeah. Or we have a different sentiment that we use the word love for. I have learned that in, it's funny, English is just so limited. And because of my time in Athens, I've learned that the Greek language has multiple terms for different kinds of love. So to your point, yeah, a lot of things can be collected up into the bucket of love.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Lots to learn this week.
I'm sweating. Holy shit. Oh my gosh. This is wonderful. All right. Well, you're on to dinner.
I am on to dinner.
Yay. It's funny today, the clocks moved ahead in North America 2 weeks earlier than the clocks in Europe. And so I've actually had a number of missteps with my clients because it's like, oh, your clocks have changed. No, they haven't changed. Oh my God, we're off by an hour. It's like, so Sara and I were a little off today, but we just caught right on back. We were totally fine.
We always managed to align at some stage.
You're right. And the clocks are turning back, which means we're going to be in sundresses on patios like so soon. No, we're not. But anyways, it's so soon.
I keep seeing the daffodils out, so they clearly know something's happening.
Oh my God, are you serious? You have daffodils?
Yeah.
We have
lots
so much snow.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
God, what am I doing in this part of the world? What? God,
you need to get yourself to Jersey.
Holy shit, I do.
There's some face-to-face podcast time.
Create a whip up a storm. Absolutely. Jersey gone wild.
I'm not sure they'd be ready for you.
Oh, gracious. I tell you. I'd imagine there's a little bit of immigration holdup. No, Doc Sass isn't allowed on this island.
We've heard all about you.
You heard about you? Oh, yeah, we knew you were coming.
We've got 140 episodes that tell me about you.
I know. Jeez, you thought you'd land up here? No, my friend. No amount of disguises can obscure the sexy Anna arrival. Yeah. No sexy Annas allowed on the island of Jersey. Oh my gosh.
Oh, all right, my lovely. Right. I am going to go and whip up my dinner.
You've got it.
All right.
Well,
till next time. So that's it for another week of Geordie Lass and Doc Sass. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed chatting. Get in touch and share your questions for relationship remedies and any hot topics you want us to cover. If you need help navigating all things relationships, Anna and Sara are available for one-on-one coaching support. Email info@geordielass.com. Please remember to like, share, subscribe if you've enjoyed listening. And if you've not, how on earth have you made it this far? I promise we'll try harder next time.